I'm going to cover just a little bit of information about the aircraft during this section. Make sure that when you climb in or move around in the airplane or get out, your handles are protected. You want to make sure and cover your handles while you're moving around in the airplane, and also check any pins or handles if you feel like something gets caught on your rig as you're moving around. When it comes to general information about how the airport's laid out and spotting and aircraft heading, a lot of people are not familiar with cardinal headings, so I want to start there. So we have south, north, west, east, and where they're at in relationship to the airport and the runway. Cardinal headings also have a degree number associated with them. So north is 0 degrees or 360 degrees, east is 90 degrees, south is 180 degrees, west is 270 degrees, and as you can see in the top left, there is a varying degree all the way in between, all the way from 0 degrees all the way around to 360 degrees back to north. The runway at the Bolivar Airport is about 4,000 feet long, and you'll want to know the airport runway length at the airport that you're jumping at. Really try hard not to cross the runway below 1,000 feet. When you cross the runway below 1,000 feet, you run into some additional hazards as far as other aircraft landing or taking off on the runway. In an emergency, if you have to cross the runway below 1,000 feet, make sure you're very vigilant in looking in both directions for oncoming aircraft. Specifically at the Bolivar Airport, you're better off landing in an alternate landing area on the other side of the runway instead of crossing the runway below 1,000 feet. Off each end of the runway is probably the most dangerous section of the aircraft landing pattern. This is where aircraft are taking off or landing at lower altitudes as they approach the runway or take off from the runway. The numbers on the runway on the north and south end indicate the direction you are looking at. So if you stand on the south end of the runway, you're going to see the numbers 3-6. And if you look straight up, that tells you you're going to be looking to the north. If you stand on the north end of the runway and you're looking south, you'll see the numbers 1-8 to show that if you look straight up, you'll be looking straight to the south. These numbers can seem a little bit backwards, as in you might think that the number 3-6 is at the north end of the runway and 1-8 is at the south end of the runway, but it makes more sense from the perspective of an aircraft coming into land. If an aircraft is coming into land from the south, they want to see the numbers 3-6 to indicate that they are, in fact, flying to the north. Because parachutes fly so much slower than aircraft, parachutes are generally within a closer distance by the time they reach 1,000 feet. With light to moderate winds, parachutes are generally within this green circle closer to the landing area. The blue lines indicate faster flying aircraft fly a much wider pattern than parachutes. This means that at the same altitude in the landing pattern, parachutes are generally inside the landing pattern of aircraft. This helps to prevent parachute and aircraft collisions. Now we're going to talk about wind direction. And as you climb in altitude, the winds are going to change at the different altitudes. At your drop zone, you will have a winds aloft board that looks similar to the section in the bottom left. This will show you the wind speeds and directions at the different altitudes. The key to reading this board is to remember that the wind direction is the direction that the winds are out of. So when I read the winds aloft board, I read it as winds at 3,000 feet are out of 90 degrees at 15 knots. So if we look at the red arrow, we can see that wind is coming out of the east, directly 90 degrees at 15 knots. Looking at the 6,000 feet altitude, we can see that winds are out of 120 degrees at 20 knots. And 1 knot is roughly equal to 1.5 miles per hour. Looking at the compass rose in the top left, you can see the different wind directions that correspond with the same color to the right.